Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pizzapia, and it's time to hit that waiver wire and hit it hard. It's week 2 already. Can you believe it? That's right. Yeah, it's Monday, so there's one more game left to play, but we're already looking forward. It was a wacky and wild week 1 in the NFL, as it always is. A lot of injuries to talk about. Those injuries are opening up, obviously, some spots for some new players, and maybe one or two guys that we've been talking about for a while here as possible sleepers that, guess what? If you picked them up already or you drafted them, you don't have to hit the waiver wire for fab, but a lot of them are still available in leagues. We're going to tell you who they are. We're going to tell you how to get them. And gentlemen, again, to help me do it, to help break down all the waiver wire, we've got Derek Brown, D-Bro, the King of Bros, Pat Fitzmaurice as well. Pat, I know it was a crazy week 1, as it always is every single time, but if there's one thing you want to take out of week 1 that you actually thought that was for real, what would that for real thing be for you?
Oh, my goodness. Maybe Arthur Smith's commitment to the running game and making me regret my massive exposure to Drake London and my above average exposure to Kyle Pitts. So, do we have to start this show on a down note like this, Joe? It's really depressing.
I don't know. I was going to talk about I believe in the Cowboys defense, and I was they are my number 1 ranked defense in draft on FantasyPros.com. My number 1 ranked defense this week. I mean, you know, they always say, Derek, the defense wins championships, but nobody really cares about defense in fantasy except this guy. And a couple years ago, I remember pounding the table for that Patriots defense that ended up winning people leagues. And I don't know about you, D-Bro, but after watching that game last night, like, I know the Giants have a lot to work on, but Micah Parsons and that defense and Stephon Gilmore and everything they got going on, this is a terrifying defensive unit. If you're looking for the challenger in the NFC, yeah, okay, it's week 1. Yeah, it was 40-0. But I think that defense is for real. So that was my takeaways. Like, the Dallas defense, that's for real. Is it going to be a, that kind of point total every week? No. But D-Bro, how about you? What's the one thing you take away from week 1 before we hit the waiver wire that really feels like, ooh-wee, this is a good start for this person or team?
Y'all know where I'm gonna go with this, Joe. You know where I'm gonna go with this, baby.
Maybe
Puka Nacua is
Puka.
him. Puka Nacua is him, baby. He had a monster week. Let's go.
Derek's very excited.
Stretch your hamstrings, baby. And I know hamstrings are kind of going down and people are struggling in the NFL. We got to stretch right now because it's victory lap time, baby. Puka was him, and it is a glorious, glorious day.
It is. Look, a beautiful time here. Puka Nacua, obviously, huge day. Now the question is, Cooper Kupp going on that IR for 4 weeks. When he comes off, what happens to Puka Nacua? If he doesn't come off, what happens to Puka Nacua? So many questions. Let's get into it. But first, we got to start here with our sleeper waiver wire ad of the week, the pick of the week. And it's not just one, it's actually 2 guys, because it's really the collective Baltimore backfield now that we've got to talk about. J.K. Dobbins, unfortunately, in game 1, did tear his Achilles. It looks like we'll get that definitive confirmation, I'm sure, sometime later today. But look, I mean, it certainly seems like it's the end of Dobbins in Baltimore this season, and probably the end of Dobbins in Baltimore, period, when we consider that contract situation he was in anyway. I don't see him coming back, which means Justice Hill, who is 0% rostered over on Sleeper, and Gus Edwards, who is 20% rostered on Sleeper. Those are the 2 big targets this week. And again, this is why you watch the shows here at Fantasy Pros, because D-Bro, I can't remember how many drafts, like the last couple picks, I'd be like, give me Gus Edwards. Give me this guy. Now, Justice Hill had the 2 touchdowns. That's what we got to talk about here, because that did happen yesterday. Yes, it was against the Texans. Yes, the Texans are bad against the run. But D-Bro, your thoughts here on these 2 Baltimore running backs, and then Fitz will get your thoughts too, because again, Justice Hill had the 2 touchdowns. Nobody's got him on Sleeper rostered, basically, with good reason, understandably so. Should they be rostering Edwards? Should they be rostering Justice Hill? Should they be rostering both?
I think you should roster both, but I don't want to say I want to throw cold water on this, guys, but there are a lot of running backs that I want to sit here and pick up that probably have a little more intrigue than both of these guys. Like, we saw this Baltimore backfield split straight down the middle after J.K. Dobbins was gone. Gus played 15 snaps. Justice Hill got 19. They split the routes. Neither one of them got targets. Both of them have 8 carries. I honestly kind of feel about this Baltimore backfield like yesteryears when we haven't had J.K. Dobbins. Like, it's just kind of a scrum of guys, and I'm just kind of like, I mean, at this moment, I'm going to let people kind of fight over Baltimore backs, and I'm going to go after a few other guys in the waiver.
So what does that cost look like then? So if you're not going to push too hard, what's a responsible cost where it makes sense for you in terms of your fab budget that you want to spend on these guys in this backfield?
3 to 5%, which means I'm probably not going to get
you ain't getting them. Fitz, you and I
probably
both
not.
know
I'm probably not.
Debro's not getting him. So if you want to get him, what do you have to spend? And do you have a favorite between Edwards and Justice Hill that you think might be the better lean at this point? Because look, it's still a couple weeks away here of, figuring out, are other running backs going to come up on the waiver wire? Are the running backs going to come up on the trade market too? But in your opinion, this Baltimore backfield that is now open season, how do you attack it from a fab standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Joe, in most non-tiny leagues, we are going to see double-digit fab expenditures for both guys this week. And like Debro, I'm not going to wind up with either because I'm not willing to go there. I think there's a better than 50-50 chance we see someone else added to this backfield. I have to imagine the agents for Kareem Hunt and Leonard Fournette might be taking calls from the Baltimore Ravens today. So wouldn't be surprised to see those guys. Maybe Melvin Gordon comes back. I don't think it's just going to be these two guys. I have a feeling about
Melvin Gordon,
that.
that's a great point because he was already there in that camp.
Yep.
I think they go right back to that. So while everybody else is like, okay, so let's say you're in the position where it seems like both of you are kind of meeting of the minds here, right? Obviously, you can check out all the waiver wire ranks on FantasyPros.com right now. They're all up there. The waiver wire new piece from Pat is up as well. You can read through all of that. So if you are somebody that wants to just put a bid in but knows you're not going to get them, would you throw the buck on Melvin Gordon? Would you throw the buck on Kareem Hunt? Like, who are you throwing the buck or two on to kind of sneak through there where you're thinking outside the box where everybody's overspending inside of it?
I think I'd be willing to bid on Kareem Hunt's or maybe a $0 bid on Melvin Gordon if I had a roster spot where I didn't mind ditching someone to get those guys. Play four-dimensional chess here because – I mean, Justice Hill had 8 carries for 9 yards yesterday. He scored 2 touchdowns, and people are going to go bonkers.
And they shouldn't.
Right, and Justice Hill has been around for a while, and when have we considered him a valuable fantasy asset? Pretty much never. So,
Debro, real quick.
Gus,
go ahead,
Gus would be my preferred ad of these two, but I'm really not chasing either guy.
Okay. Debro, in your opinion, like which one's got Melvin Gordon, Kareem Hunt? You want to sneak one of these guys on your roster too because you think that's really where the long-term version is going here for Baltimore?
Yeah, I mean, give me a $0 bid on Kareem Hunt. If Leonard Fournette's out there, same thing. I think we're all just burying the lead.
Why not Melvin? Melvin's the guy that was in camp. He already knows the playbook. Like, Melvin to me makes, Pat nailed it, I think. I think that's exactly the guy that we're looking for.
That's fair.
In fact, Pat, is he even on our waiver rankings? We should add him this week. I think we should.
Yep.
We are fantasy pros. We're playing that. How many dimensions of the chess? I don't know. There was a lot of them. There's 4. 5, I think 7, that's 17? Like 3 too many for me. But anyway, but let me tell you, we should add him to the waiver wire column this week. We should add him to the stuff because I think that is a incredible. And this is why I love doing these shows with you guys because you sit here, we sit together, and we come up with solutions to these problems. And look, people are going to have problems. There were a lot of people in blue tents yesterday. There was a lot of injuries yesterday, unfortunately, in week 1. Some good things did happen though because we've got a winner of the autographed AJ Brown jersey, courtesy of bettingpros.com, and it's Lazy Laz. Lazy Laz was not lazy. Let me tell you a story about Lazy Laz. Lazy Laz subscribed to Fantasy Pros. Lazy Laz clicked the bell till it went ding, and Lazy Laz dropped a comment below, and Lazy Laz now has an AJ Brown autographed jersey. So Laz, congratulations. Hit us up at mailbag@fantasypros.com. Again, mailbag@fantasypros.com with your mailing address, proof of your subscription to Fantasy Pros YouTube channel, and we'll get that jersey shipped out to you. Lazy Laz, congrats. And by the way, we've got new stuff. If you want to win a Tyreek Hill autographed jersey, thanks to our good friends at Betting Pros, and that jersey is red hot right now. It is on fire after yesterday's incredible performance from Tua and from Tyreek Hill. I'm still trying to figure out how he caught that ball in the corner of the end zone. I don't know how that happened. I don't know how. You want to talk a 4-dimensional chess? That is something like is in another dimension. How that ball somehow got caught. But again, Tyreek Hill. That jersey's coming at you. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Drop the comment below. Click the bell till it goes ding, and you might win that next one. We're giving away jerseys autographed. Make it your business to get in on that stuff. All right, another guy who's going to be very popular We talked about it before, Pat. You mentioned it in your sorrow at the beginning of the show. Is the Atlanta Falcons run game being so run heavy? Which, again, I don't know why this is a surprise to anybody. I mean, it just feels like that's who the Atlanta Falcons are going to be, because that's who Arthur Smith is. Now, Tyler Allgeier is 57% roster. That's a high number. Normally, we don't talk about these guys, but I feel like it's week one. There's a lot of players that get dropped before. So, I mean, this 57, I think, is right on that bubble, but we got to talk about it because he's still available in enough leagues where it's right on the borderline. Now, that being said, Bijan looked spectacular in that game. Allgeier had the touchdowns, right? So, should people be wasting fab on Allgeier, Pat, in your opinion?
I think they should.
Okay.
Not only does he have some standalone value as a potential flex guy in an offense that is so outrageously run heavy with Arthur Smith taking us back to the 1940s, but Allgeier is a league winner if Bijan goes down, and I despise the term league winner, but if something happened to Bijan, Allgeier is instantly like one of the most valuable running backs there is in our game.
All right. I'm of the mind that by the time we get to October 1st, we're going to be looking. It's like, oh, yeah, remember those 2 touchdowns from Tyler Allgeier? Wasn't that cute in week one because Bijan just takes over. Because, Bijan is also the guy, if people remember, the most missed tackles or tackles evaded in college football last year. That's a thing. And we saw it on display. D-Bro, Allgeier for you. How do you attack this one, too? Is this one where you agree with Pat where, hey, the insurance policy is huge, but he also has some flex appeal?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons to like Allgeier. Now, I'm not going to go, breaking the fab bank on them. I mean, 5 to 7%. And this also, it's a continuing theme with the running back position for this week. I think that there's a lot of guys in this discussion that we're looking at that have similar standalone value right now, much less similar contingent upside if everything breaks their way. So for me, it kind of comes down to I like Allgeier and I'm willing to bid on him, but I'm not going to get aggressive. I'm not going to go nuts about it because there are a lot of other running backs we're going to sit here and talk about today where I think I can get similar production, similar role, and for maybe a cheaper price.
Pat, give me a fab percentage for Allgeier.
8%.
8%. How about you, D-Bro?
5 to 7.
I feel like both of you aren't going to get him at that, too. I feel like
Probably
that's
not.
another guy you're probably not going to get. If you want Allgeier, it feels like you might have to go a little bit further with the trough there. All right, let's continue on here. I want to talk to you guys about maybe some guys potentially to drop. Obviously, J.K. Dobbins is somebody you can drop. I think that's pretty easy right now. That's an easy one. Deon Jackson, is that a guy you want to drop? Rashaad Penny, is that a guy you want to drop? Those guys are on your roster. Who do you think has more drop ability, as it will? D-Bro, you want to hold on to Penny? You want to hold on to Deon Jackson?
Cut both of them.
Cut
Bye-bye. Off the roster. Gone.
All right. What about you, Pat? You ready to already ditch Rashaad Penny already?
Yeah, he's 4th in the pecking order. And with Gainwell having a 62% snap share yesterday, 62%. It ran 16 routes, had 4 targets, 14 carries. Like, he was the lead guy. And, man, it's just going to take... It would take a lot, I think, for things to be shaken up to the point where Penny became fantasy relevant right now. So, yeah, I think just
weird.
Cut your losses.
But, Pat, isn't it weird? Because basically Philly was telling us that, and nobody wanted to believe it.
I know.
I mean, they've been telling us all summer. Like,
yeah,
and
they were.
Every beat reporter, every coach speak after practice.
I didn't believe it. Yeah.
I mean, and here Kenneth Gainwell was just still a free square in so many drafts, and it's unbelievable. All right, let's talk about some other guys potentially worth adding. Give me a couple of these names here. We got Tank Bigsby, we got Kyron Williams, Sean Tucker. I know those guys are out there. Joshua Kelly's out there too. He got some play, especially later in that game. He had a big touchdown, and then Roschon Johnson, my dude, also looked pretty good. So D-Bro, those are some of the other guys out there of that mix of players. Who kind of stands out to you, and who do you think is really worth going after?
I mean, Joshua Kelly and Roschon. Those are the 2 guys that I've been pounding the table for, especially with Roschon. And Joshua Kelly, I've had intrigue as we've gone through draft season. And both of these guys, these are the guys that I feel like if they're out there, and both of these guys, Kelly's 4% rostered, Roschon's 15% rostered. These are the guys where people are going to go spin for the Allgeiers. And I'm with spinning over Gainwell. We didn't talk about that, but I am willing to sit here and open up the wallet. Like 15%, 18% on Gainwell. I'm willing to be really aggressive on him. But these other guys, These are the ones that I think you could sneak through for cheaper fab bids. Now, I'm going to be a little more aggressive on them, like 5 to 7% on Joshua Kelly. For a player that we saw 47% of the snaps, 16 carries, 91 rushing yards. This guy ran 17 routes to Austin Eckler's 24. If anything happens to Austin Eckler, Joshua Kelly, we just use the moniker of league winner.
Yeah.
Tell me how Joshua Kelly is not a freaking league winner. If anything happens to Austin Eckler and we're buying into a better offense for cheaper fab, so other people can go chase the 2 touchdowns with Tyler Allgeier. Have fun. Enjoy that. I'm going to go grab Joshua Kelly for cheaper and buy a piece of a better offense, one of the best offenses in the NFL. And so that's the direction I want to go. And the same thing for Roschon Johnson. It took 1 week, people, for Roschon Johnson to lead the Chicago backfield in snaps, routes, and targets. And you could say whatever you want to about it being garbage time. Sure, I'll give you the target discussion for that. But the rest of that usage, that's on Roschon, baby.
Well,
he's the best running back in that backfield, and he can take over that David Montgomery role as we move along through the season.
Bet on
and
talent.
He's going to go for cheaper than he should.
Bet on talent. Going back to Kelly, you weren't on the show last week, but Pat, Joshua Kelly was one of your favorite waiver wire stashes last week on the podcast. We talked about him. You said,
Hell of a
hey,
call.
Pat's like, hey, you should add this guy now.
No. It was Erickson.
Oh, no, there was Erickson.
It was
you know what?
Erickson.
He's not here. Pat,
Hell of a call.
that was all you, Pat. You did a great job. We don't give Erickson any credit. Forget that. Let's give it all to you, Pat. I remember one of you was very much on that. So, all right, fine. I'll give the respect to Andrew Erickson. But Andrew was saying, hey, add this guy now for nothing. Stash him and see what happens. Because what happens if Eckler goes down in week 1 and all of a sudden you got this winner? But going back to the Gainwell conversation, too, this is a guy that's only rostered still in 35% of leagues on Sleeper. And again, make sure you're playing over on Sleeper. It's the best place to play your fantasy football. All my leagues are on Sleeper this year and last year, too, that I could get on there. Kenneth Gainwell, Pat. Again, we heard it. We heard the buzz. We were told. Nobody listened. And now it's in front of our face. So how aggressive do you want to be? Debro said 15%. How much are you going to go fab-wise for Gainwell?
I'm at 15% too. I think that's a good move for the
go.
guy who is now the lead back. Yeah, it's a committee, so maybe he is the chairman of the committee. But for a team with arguably the best offensive line in football, a team that's going to have run-friendly game scripts often this year because the Eagles are one of the best teams in the league. Yeah, I'm excited about it. And a dual run catch guy. Like, I think he's well worth going in on. And I just want to push back, actually, on Debro, because I'm unfortunately going to have to agree with them on a lot of things later in the show. But, like, I'm not as excited about Roschon or Josh Kelly. With Josh Kelly, it's just that I've seen him. I think he's just a guy. And yesterday was one of his better games that he has
Pat, here's a
coming
question.
into the league.
Pat, is just a guy in that offense more than just a guy?
I mean, we saw the Chargers lead for most of that game. Like, it was always the Dolphins having to return volley there. Like, they were behind for much of that game. It was a pretty run-friendly game script for the Chargers. But, like, that's more than we've seen from Kelly. Like, a bigger share of the running game than we've typically seen from him. So I'm not totally buying it based on that one game. I'm also not buying that Roschon has really vaulted, changed like the mixture of that backfield yet. Yeah, it was a weird game script because the Bears were getting trucked by my Green Bay Packers. Thank you very much.
Here we go. Homer card. I was waiting for it. That's exactly what I was waiting for.
I just think it's going to be a three-way, Debro. It's going to be Herbert, Roschon, and Foreman. We saw all three guys yesterday. Yeah, things kind of tilted towards Roschon, but only after the game got out of hand.
Okay. All right. So that's a look.
Talent wins out, baby.
That's a look at the RBs right now from the guys. Again, if you want more, make sure you go over to fantasypros.com. Check out the waiver wire column. It's up there right now. You can also check out our rankings. And don't forget to also download my playbook and sync all your leagues so you can use the waiver assistant. You can find the top available players, the free agent finder, all these things. So you can go across all your leagues when you sync. I don't care if you're playing 2 on CBS, 3 on Sleeper, whatever you got going on here. You could set your lineups from the My Playbook app. You could also check all of your free agent waiver wire pickups from there too. That is a huge thing, so you can really cut down on the time and energy that you're spending on these things and do it the right way. Let's get to the wide receivers, shall we? Let's do this. Let's talk about them. We're going to have to talk about the most added guys over on Sleeper. And right now, Puka Nacua is starting to tick up that sticking up. But Jayden Reed, as of last night, was the guy that was most added yesterday. So that was a really interesting one, too. So I want to start here with Mr. Packer. I want to start with Jayden Reed. Romeo Doubs looked good in that game. Christian Watson was out. So, Pat, when it comes to Jayden Reed, let's talk about his ability. He's a rookie, but he's an older rookie, so there's every chance that he could contribute for the rest of the season for the Packers. How much of investment do you want to make on him, or is it just one of these guys you don't chase week one?
Well, I generally don't spend a lot of fab on wide receivers, Joe, but Reed is a nice one to have available, as is Doubs. I mean, 2 and 3 in the pecking order for a team whose passing game might be a little better than everyone anticipated coming in, with Jordan Love, who looked sharp in week 1. So I would prioritize Doubs if he's available. I think he is available in fewer leagues, however, than Jayden Reed. So yeah, Jayden Reed is slippery. Not only did he have a nice game as a pass catcher, he had a couple of nice kick returns too. This guy is really exciting with the ball at his hands. So I do not mind if I'm thin at wide receiver, throwing a few dollars at him. 5% is kind of my standard bid for him this week, but if I had a need at wide receiver, maybe I'd be willing to bump it up to 7 or 8%.
All right, Jayden Reed is 22% rostered right now. Debro, in your opinion, is that somebody worth chasing, or do you let this guy go?
I'm probably going to not get him in most of my leagues. I'm probably at about 2-3% of fab, and this just comes down to not hate for Jayden Reed. He had a good game, rookie, talented player, but looking at how this Packers offense operated, a 45% passing rate in week 1, that's tough to really get behind. And like I get we could sit here and package this up and make it sound pretty with an 18% target share, but 5 targets, the only thing that saved his day and Romeo Doubs' days were the touchdowns. And chasing touchdowns in a low volume passing attack. And when Christian Watson comes back, I don't think anybody with that's actually being honest with themselves is going to tell you that anybody besides Christian Watson is going to be the alpha in this offense.
Yeah, that's my fear.
So I don't want to chase any of the Packers wide receivers. Like, if you need a wide receiver, fine, throw the $1, $2 fab bids in. That's okay, but I'm not going to go above that.
What about
it was low volume because they were crushing the Bears, and now Aaron Jones is banged up. So if he misses time, I would expect them to skew more pass heavy in the weeks to come.
No, I mean, that could definitely happen. The question is how much, I guess.
I guess also the question is, when Watson comes back and Doubs looked pretty good yesterday, all of a sudden, what's the ratio? That's probably the most important thing. I think it's one of those deeper league plays, and it's also one of those, don't overspend. I think that's the problem, right, guys? Because in week 1, everybody's got all their fab, right? For the most part, like, these names, I want to make sure I get the right guys. But then, they're not thinking about week 10 because it's going to be, I hate to break this to everybody. Yep. Come close here. Come by the fire. Uncle Joey's going to tell you a story. There's going to be more injuries. I know. It's depressing. It's going to be more, and there's going to be more reasons to spend fab budget. So let's pace ourselves. It's good to be aggressive early, especially on guys where you see clarity. But I think the biggest question here is Puka Nacua, because that is the question about clarity. And we got to get to this guy next, because Puka is rostered in just 10% of leagues on Sleeper. Debro, I know it's early, but you are ready to be aggressive. Now, you were somebody, in all fairness, you were talking about him at the end of draft season. You were talking about him last couple of weeks. We did live streams. We talked about it. I was not buying in. I'm converted. I've seen it now with my eyes. Fitz and I are like that. Sometimes we just need to see it. Now the problem is it's going to cost us, but we don't know the clarity with the Cooper Kupp situation. If he comes back in a few weeks, is Puka Nacua just a complete waste of our fab? How do you approach this responsibly here? Because it's only week 1.
I think you approach it responsibly by being aggressive as hell. And I'm going to say that because we have the risk that Cooper Kupp maybe doesn't play this year. Like, we cannot wipe that off the table. He's on the IR right now. He's dealing with a hamstring issue and who knows what else, because the reports out of the Rams are muddy, to just say the least, about what's going on with Cooper Kupp. And so everybody's like, oh, well, when he comes back in week 4, what if he doesn't come back in week 4? And we're left with Puka Nacua, who had a 39%. Listen to this, people. A 39% target share yesterday. Since 1980, only 6 wide receivers, 6, have finished in week 1 with more receiving yards in their first NFL game. This guy dominated, and I'm not even going to sell this. I'm not trying to upsell this to anybody. He operated. I watched every single freaking snap of that game. He operated in the Cooper Kupp role. He was outside. He was inside. They had him in bunch formations. Matthew Stafford, Puka was his first read. And I'm here to tell you, if they had more of a rapport, he could have had an even bigger game with 2 to 3 passes for Matthew Stafford that were behind Nacua and he could not get to it. So as big as his game was, he could have caught 12 or 13 balls in this game. So I'm not going to sit here and I'm not trying to sit here and be over the moon or sit here pounding the table more for a guy that I was already in on. But 25% of your fab, I'm here for that. Because if you get this guy and he's getting 10 plus targets on a weekly basis, we're going to talk about league winners. Yes, that is easier to find at the running back position because of injuries and because of volume and because of all those different things. How many of those do you find at wide receiver?
Not many.
I was just talking about you really don't. You don't. Because what happens is wide receiver and target shares are a reflection of talent. You don't find many guys on the waiver wire that can command a 20% target share, much as a freaking 39% target share. So I don't want to sit here and mince words with people, but you need to spend aggressively and get him because Cooper Kupp is no certain thing to come back in week 4, week 5, or to come back at all this season.
All right. D-Bro has made his closing arguments. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Pat Fitzmaurice, you finally saw it now. Now that you've seen it, how aggressive do you want to be? And did some of those arguments that Derek just made kind of sway you towards the doom and gloom of Cooper Kupp maybe being a little bit more aggressive than you originally thought you would be on Puka Nacua?
Oh, yeah. D-Bro has been pinning me down on the ground and pouring the Puka Nacua Kool-Aid down my gullet.
All the
forcing
Puka
it
juice.
down.
All the Puka juice.
Whether I wanted it or not, I have got a throat full of Puka Nacua.
Well, it's been a good run here, Fantasy Pros, everybody.
That's going to be clipped for social.
It's been a good run at Fantasy Pros. I've enjoyed my time here hosting this show. This has been great. I hope everybody's enjoyed this.
All right,
Pat,
maybe
you had a good
maybe
run.
that didn't come out right. But there are 2 things I should focus on with Puka's usage and just the overall situation. Number 1 is that Cooper Kupp, he was sent halfway across the country to see a hamstring specialist about his injury. Anyone who thinks he is going to come right off of IR in week 5, that is putting the fantasy into fantasy football. I don't think he's going to be ready in week 5. I think it's very unlikely that happens. Number 2, looking at Puka's average depth of target, 9.6 yards. I didn't watch that game as closely as D-Bro because I was watching the Packers destroy the Bears. But I was happy to see that he was used in a sort of a more conventional way, and that it wasn't just a bunch of slip screens and hitches, bubble screens. It was legitimate wide receiver usage. That's exciting. So yeah, I'm excited about Puka now, and I would be willing to bid at least 15%, I think.
All right. While we still have sponsors, I want to give them some love because after that discussion about Puka Nacua, I could certainly use a cold Miller Lite. I know it's early in the morning, but it's noon somewhere. Look, picking your fantasy team can be hard. Picking guys off the waiver wire can be even more difficult. But picking your beer shouldn't be hard because Miller Lite has got more taste and only 96 calories with friends coming together to talk about fantasy football and say things that are hilarious right here on the program. It's Miller time. That's what time it is. And the best part of fantasy football, besides winning, of course, is enjoying a cold Miller Lite with your friends. Because when it's football time, it's Miller time, baby. Why? Because football and beer go together, and beer makes football better. We all know that. Not only does Miller Lite have more taste than the others, but it's also got just 96 calories. Good draft, bad draft, who cares? It's all about the Miller Lite draft. That's what you want. And it's still, again, 96 calories. That's good for your waistline, fellas. I know you're all looking there, and the ladies too. Every good fantasy football draft needs 3 things: professional tips, friends, and ice cold Miller Lite. You can get it right now at MillerLite.com/buybeeronline. Again, MillerLite.com/buybeeronline. Miller Lite and football, baby, the perfect combination. All right, let's get some other combinations here. 2 more wide receivers. I'm going to group them together because they're right on that 50% mark. Nico Collins at 44%, Van Jefferson at 49%. You guys are fading both of these guys, it feels like, from a fab perspective. Am I correct here, Fitz?
No interest in the Texans passing game whatsoever. Yes.
Okay.
So we knew Nico was going to be the lead guy. I just don't think that really amounts to much fantasy value.
Well, is that not fair after 1 week against the Ravens on the road for CJ Stroud? Like, should we practice more patience? Like, do you want to drop Nico Collins?
I don't know about drop, but like he would not be a guy I would be clinging to on my roster.
So you would obviously be moving Puka Nacua in over Nico Collins, yes?
Oh, definitely.
What about Jayden Reed over Nico Collins?
Yeah, I'd rather have Jayden Reed. Like, this is not going to be a high-powered passing game. There's some other guys involved. Maybe when John Mechie is healthy, he cuts into that target share. I'm not sure. But, yeah, I don't see Nico being like a giant alpha in that offense. And even if he is, that probably makes him a wide receiver 4 at best.
All right, Debro, how about you? Same sentiment here when it comes to Collins and Van Jefferson, or I know you're so much on Puka Nacua, but Van Jefferson was the 2 on the depth chart too when Cooper Kupp was still quote unquote healthy.
I have no interest on Van Jefferson. He posted a very Van line, 13% target share, 5 targets, 24 receiving yards. Okay. That's not going to pay the bills. Don't care about Van Jefferson. I will push back on Fitz about Nico Collins. I will take Nico over Jayden Reed. A 25% target share, 11 targets, perks my ears up, and he was productive with it, 2.0 yards per route run. So I'm a big fan of CJ Stroud. I think in week 1, he showed some good things against a tough defense. So I'm willing to sit and roster Nico Collins over Jayden Reed. But again, we're talking about guys that 2-3% of your fab. Like, I'm not busting the bank if he's out there on the waiver wire anyway, though.
Would you drop Kadarius Toney? Because Kadarius Toney certainly dropped everything.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
He's
getting dropped like a bad habit.
And I guess that's the fascinating thing is, like, they did keep throwing him the football. They kept funneling it through. Pat, do you feel the same way? Like, do you want to drop Toney or do you want to give him one more week and see what happens?
Oh, yeah. Toney's week 1, 0.2 yards per target, 1.2 Detroit Lions points per target. He is all tools, no toolbox. It's time to drop Kadarius Toney.
He had a -2, I saw, expected fantasy total every time he touched the football. Which is I've never heard of that before. It was kind of staggering. All right, what about Adam Thielen, Pat? You want to drop him?
No, not yet. I mean, I think he's going to be the safety blanket for Bryce Young a lot of the year, and he wasn't fully healthy coming into that game, so not really judging him based on that.
Okay, how about you here, Debro? You want to hold on to Thielen a little longer?
Old man could go out to pasture.
Hey, easy. Because somebody I know just turned...
I'm not exactly young anymore.
Somebody just turned the 4-0, I know, later this past week. All of a sudden now, you got to watch that stuff now,
To the glue factory.
You're on the other side now, friend. Listen here, friendo. Can't get away with that grandpa stuff anymore. All right, let's talk about some other guys here. Romeo Doubs, 31% rostered. Zay Jones, 30% rostered. And from what we saw last week anyway, or should I say Sunday, Christian Kirk was only on the field when they had those 3 wide receiver sets and some other stuff. So Zay Jones was on the field more than I think any of us thought. Jacoby Myers, who did take a bad injury there, but still had a big day, 50% rostered. Rashid Shaheed, 16% rostered. Debro, any of these names pop up to you as viable in terms of adding this week?
Yeah, I mean, Zay Jones has to be near the top of everybody's list. I mean, he's in that wide receiver 3-4 conversation. We saw him be a wide receiver 3 last year in fantasy. So can he produce that, especially if he's getting 2 wide snaps over Christian Kirk? Absolutely, man. So I don't care. You can put 5%, 7% in on him. I'm with that. And Rashid Shaheed, yes, we need to talk about him because I was worried Michael Thomas coming back. Is he going to get buried down the depth chart? What does this look like? And Rashid Shaheed showed that his 3rd in yards per route run ranking last year, 24th in PFF receiving grade, was absolutely in line with his talent, man. 18% target share, 3.5 yards per route run in week 1, and he added on top 2 more rushing attempts for 11 yards on the ground. He looked explosive. And these upcoming matchups, I think either Chris Olave, with the defenses they're going to face, either Chris Olave or Michael Thomas could get shadowed. It is going to be some really good weeks for Rashid Shaheed coming up that he could get targets that are funneled his way. And one more name I'm going to bring up here, I don't want to just stay on the Rams offense, but we talked about Van Jefferson. I don't care about Van, but you can interest me in Tutu Atwell. Considering this week, yes, he was productive. He went out there and he out-targeted Van Jefferson, a 21% target share. And again, I watched every snap of this game. the way that Sean McVay was in his bag in this game. Absolutely in his bag. Tutu Atwell was used in motion. He played off coverage the entire game. If you're talking about a guy that if Cooper Kupp does not come back, who could step up next to Puka Nacua in this passing attack for a passing attack that is going to be throwing a ton because the defense is terrible? Tutu Atwell can have some really serviceable weeks in your flex or wide receiver 3 position.
Pat, give me some of your takes on, real quick, Romeo Doubs, Zay Jones, Jacoby Myers, even Shaheed or Atwell. In your opinion, how do you approach these guys? Are any of them, well, maybe more one than the other on your radar?
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about having sort of an array of wide receivers to choose from is that you can sort of manage your bidding and not go overboard on any one guy and still get yourself a pretty good receiver. I mentioned I like Dobbs a little more than Jayden Reed, so he would probably be my favorite ad of those guys, but I also like Zay, and we saw this in the preseason. Zay is playing ahead of Christian Kirk in 2 receiver sets, so he is going to outsnap and possibly out-target Christian Kirk this year. So I like him. And Shaheed is just good. I mean, I realize the Saints were feasting on one of the worst pass defenses in the league in week 1 with the Titans, but Shaheed is just a good player, and you can see it. Like, it shows up on the field.
Yeah. Yeah, he was one of my intriguing, like, dart throw guys at the end of drafts, too. All right, let's do some quarterbacks, some tight ends, and a little bit of defense, too. We'll talk about the streaming guys potentially for week 2. Give me a streaming quarterback for week 2 here. Derek Brown, go.
Sam Howell, baby. He's only rostered in 22% of leagues. He faces a Denver secondary that allowed Jimmy Garoppolo, of all people, to complete 76% of his passes, 7.7 yards per attempt. And the thing we did not see out of Howell that still is in his bag of tricks is the rushing upside. We could see that in week 2. So, yeah, if I'm streaming somebody, it's going to be Sam Howell.
Did see the rushing touchdown out of him. That was a good moment there. That was a big moment there for the franchise, I think, that day. All right, Fitz, give me a streaming QB for week 2.
Derek Carr. Debro's a Saints fan. He realizes how weak the Saints schedule is. It's just a a cupcake festival for the Saints all year. And he's got, Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, Juwan Johnson, and soon Alvin Kamara as weapons. Like, I think you can play Derek Carr in pretty much all year.
All right, so Derek Carr, 38% rostered, Howell, 22% rostered on Sleeper. How about tight end? I know that was a big one, too. A lot of tight end discussions. So with the Kelsey injury, with the Mark Andrews being out, I mean, with Darren Waller, and question marks. Debro, give me a streaming tight end for the week.
I'll go with Hayden Hurst, but I'm saying this with a caveat. Do not play him this week. I'm looking at the next 2 matchups after this with Seattle and Minnesota, who are very, very fantasy friendly to tight ends. So pick up Hayden Hurst. Do not start him against the New Orleans Saints. They are a no-fly zone. We've said this for years for tight end, but Hayden Hurst, all the usage was what we want. 71% route participation, 18% target share. He's the best of a bunch of bad options for Carolina, and with that, he could volume his way to a bunch of top 12 weeks in fantasy.
All right, give me a streaming tight end for next week here. Pat, who do you have?
Luke Musgrave, and I'm glad he fell down on what should have been a long touchdown because that's going to keep him a little cheaper than he would have been otherwise on a bizarre play where Jordan Love fumbled the snap, picked it up, and somehow the Bears didn't have a man within 30 yards of Luke Musgrave, about 40 yards downfield. So, I mean, I think Musgrave had a terrific training camp, was just a revelation. They were running jet sweeps to him in training camp. Crazy athletic. I think he's going to be pretty heavily involved in the Green Bay offense, and he's a nice ad.
Speaking of Green Bay, your defense of the week to stream is the Green Bay Packers, 32% roster. Yes, Pat?
No, that's Debro's.
Oh, it's Debro's. Oh,
yes, sir.
Wow, Debro's going there.
I'm stepping into cheesehead country, okay?
There you go, stepping into cheese.
I mean, look, we're going to start with the start all defenses against Desmond Mitter. That just needs to be the thing this year.
Call him Desmond Mitter. I think you did.
Yes, I did. I sure did. 4 sacks, 1 fumble. I mean, he looks terrible. I think it's just a Mitter. It's a Mitter little bit of time until we see Taylor Heineke.
You want to call him Mitter because he's mid? You want to do that? Like the kids say?
He's very mid.
Pat, you and I are always in on what the kids say. What do the kids say about a streaming defense this week? What do you think?
Cleveland Browns, 10%.
Yeah,
I mean, they held the Bengals to 6 first downs and made Joe Burrow look like a Division III quarterback in his first start of the year. So They get Pittsburgh, which obviously was very out of sorts offensively in week 1. And then 2 pretty easy matchups after that. So I think he could ride the Browns for about 3 weeks.
All right, so for those of you who don't have free agent budgets, here are the top picks of the week. Derek Brown, why don't you go first? Give me your 1 through 5, your priority waiver wire pickups for week 2.
Number 1, top of the heap, is Puka Nacua. Number 2, Kenneth Gainwell. Roschon Johnson after him. Kyron Williams, we did not talk about a ton here, but he definitely needs to be inside of that top 5. He's my 4th guy. And the 5th, I'm going to give a little caveat and context here because honestly, I'm divided on these guys. Joshua Kelly, Luke Musgrave, and Rashid Shaheed can all be in that 5th spot. It just depends on what you need for your roster.
Okay, Fitz, how about you? Give me your top 5 waiver wire ads of the week for those people who have priority waivers.
Very similar to Debro's list. Puka is my number 1. Kenneth Gainwell, my number 2. Tyler Allgeier, where Debro is going Roschon, I'm going Allgeier at number 3. I also have Kyron Williams at number 4. We didn't talk about him enough. He played ahead of Cam Akers yesterday. The only reason Akers got 20-plus carries was because they had a big lead and were just milking it at the end with the running game. And then Luke Musgrave 5th.
Okay, there you have it. Real quick, this is from the Discord channel here. I was having a conversation with somebody in our Discord, fantasypros.com/chat. Again, free to join. So I asked this question on Twitter, and I want to ask this question to you guys too. Do the Ravens become interested in Jonathan Taylor, yes or no, now that they have a big, giant, gaping hole here at running back for the rest of the season? I know it's not their MO. Debro, do you think they kick the tires on JT?
Absolutely. I almost brought this up earlier during the Gus and Justice Hill conversation where I was like, I think we're just burying the lead here, people. Like, if there's a spot where a team is going to trade for a running back, it's obviously Baltimore. So that's, again, I don't have a lot of interest in Gus and Justice Hill because you could just be blowing your fab and it's JT season in Baltimore very soon.
I still love the cheap. Like, I don't think Melvin Gordon's going to be great, but I think the cheap Melvin Gordon is an interesting pivot.
Yeah,
Fitz,
still a good call.
Do you think, though, that they don't do the normal Baltimore Raven thing and they actually get aggressive here because, like, hey, this division's up for grabs, it's super competitive, we can't afford to fall behind? Do you think they start to look at Taylor, especially now that they know they're not going to make a financial commitment to Dobbins now that he's had another injury?
Yeah, I feel like it's a long shot it happens, Joe, but they owe it to themselves to at least inquire and give the Colts a call. And we got a report a few days ago that Taylor was expected to pass a physical very soon, and that he was going to report basically as soon as he was off IR. So if Taylor is ready to roll, yeah, I mean, that would certainly help the Ravens. And man, would that shake things up in the fantasy world.
Big week 1, lots of waiver wire. Download my playbook, use the waiver assistant, use all the tools to help you add the right players. Of course, don't forget to play on the Sleeper app. Don't forget to get your beer. Also, you can order it online at MillerLite.com/buy beer online. That's the place to do it. Very easy. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Pat Fitzmaurice and Derek Brown, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.